I'm joined today by three esteemed analysts from Infotech: Ari Glazel, Rob Fail, and Vince Mirabelli. Gentlemen, I want to jump right into the discussion on Solution DLC. Really interesting and innovative model here. And I wanted to ask you right off the bat, is this something that is kind of tailor-made for small, medium-sized, projects and software challenges, or does it scale all the way up to, kind of enterprise software? Vince, do you want to take that first?
The principles that are included in the blueprint apply across the board. I think they help establish good practices in your software delivery, your product management, and your continuous improvement, continuous delivery model. So that builds out your solution DLC. So I would say that this scales across the board.
I got a question for either of you, if you don't mind me asking a question now based on that. Would you start there? Like if I'm picking up the Infotech research on this, would you start with, say, for example, your ERP implementation, or would you start with something smaller?
It would depend. It's always about depends, right?
Right.
It is one of those, if you have no process or framework to work with, then this will give you a starting place. Mm-hmm. If you already have certain pieces in place, mm-hmm. then maybe you need to optimize some of those first.
Right.
If, for example, intake, right. Requirements analysis. If you don't have that piece, then the rest of it's not going to work because there's no solution to deliver because you don't actually or can't right. figure out what you're delivering. Mm-hmm. So that in the end you have to have the start in the right place mm-hmm. to get you through. You also ultimately will need the framework because you need from start to finish.
Right.
So does it apply? Yes, it should probably apply to everything. Do you have to apply it to everything immediately? No, but you will at some point.
I would say, just to build on that, I would say, could you apply it to an ERP size project from jump? Yes, you could.
Yeah.
Should you? I'm a big believer in getting some at-bats and getting some practice and locking in the process before being able to apply it at a broader scale. So it would scare me to do something that massive, right. But that's not to say that you couldn't.
Well, so let me take that.
Uh-oh.
Because for an ERP, the reason actually people have Infotech is because we have the experience to take you through that solution framework. So you don't have to apply it. You use our methodology, you apply our expertise to give you the framework without actually having you to understand the framework. But so it does get applied. I don't think you'll be successful without the framework in an ERP implementation, but you don't necessarily have to have it. You can borrow it from an expert such as us.
Just staying on that point for a minute, Rob, one of the maybe more controversial things, we wrote on this is just waterfall is dead. Right, as one of our insights. Given the work you do in the enterprise app space, is waterfall dead? Should it be dead? Is it dead in some areas? And how does that apply when we get to the biggest implementations?
My background, software developer for more than 20 years. There's always been that question. Now, I've always been on the more flexible, I'm not very good at following rules kind of side. So it's always been, when is waterfall successful? Waterfall is successful if you understand all your requirements up front and everything you have to deliver. Hardware engineering, chip and level engineering, you need that because it's incredibly expensive to make a mistake. That if you design a software chip, it costs you about $25 million in today to do a prototype. You don't want to get right. very many mistakes when you do that, because you're throwing away $25 million. So in that case, waterfall makes sense because you have an incredible amount of front-end effort before you get to the solution because of the value. And I think that's really where you have to look at it. What's the value delivered by doing that waterfall, full solutioning, throw it over the fence to the next stage?
I want to talk about first of all, focus on waterfall is dead.
Sure.
So Eric Ries of the Lean Startup books and articles, if you've read it, he said a few pretty profound things. One of them was, waterfall is only appropriate if you completely understand the problem and solution. Agile is only appropriate Agile is only appropriate if you understand the problem but not the solution. And Lean you would use if you don't understand the problem or the solution, and you need to figure out both. And so focusing on waterfall for a second, right? I challenge any member to tell me that they have something that they're implementing where they completely understand the problem and solution perfectly. If you do, then you just need a checklist going from 1 through 10, do that and you're done, right? That's not what we're, with the Solution DLC, what we're saying is that, that's just not the case. That's not realistic. Let's not pretend that we live in that world still. There are certain you're right, and specific, very specific, more narrow than I think anyone really implies, where waterfall is still appropriate. But really, in the context of IT organizations and what they're providing and the value they're providing to their customers, internal customers and external customers, waterfall is truly dead.
Yeah. And I would say that in the vast majority of cases,
yes,
it does not apply. And now people will continue to try to apply it, but it doesn't. As I said, it isn't dead because there is that small percentage. It's so small, it's not even worth discussing.
So sticking with that for a minute, I mean, you talked, Rob, about I guess the cost of failure or the cost of a redo. And so, in some specific instances, you need to be able to answer those questions, before before the shovel goes in the ground, so to speak.
Yes.
Is that true of, an ERP implementation, of a CRM implementation? Like when you've got that level of complexity, how do you best leverage something like the Solution DLC to make sure that you're finding the right balance between, we're going to iterate and fail fast versus we're going to answer all the questions before the shovel's in the ground?
So an ERP is already decomposed into systems. You've got accounts payable, you've got procurement, you've got your full supply chain. These are all pieces that in some cases you can implement in parallel or stand alone. So often as you're implementing your core finance, you can go ahead and do your procurement pipeline because they're not really connected except for the final piece to get the invoice over there. But all procurement setup isn't dependent on the finance setup. So you can do these and you can decide how fast I can fail on these different pieces. And you can fail independently without affecting the rest of the program. So there is lots of flexibility. This definitely applies that you can do a full solution delivery. You could do the fail fast and temporary piece. Look at data migration. Nobody gets data migration right the first time. It is often a multi-part stage piece. And in the end, you may just decide it's good enough. So there is built-in failure in an ERP. You just have to manage it.
It's never one shot. You never shoot your shot and then you don't get another shot at it, right? But the whole concept around Solution DLC and the integration of Agile and good product practice on the front end, CI/CD, integrated CI/CD pipeline on the far end there is you're going to be taking a lot of smaller shots, and it's about organizing those shots appropriately. So even in the case of an ERP here, and I believe you're saying this, is really, it is about, I'm not going to implement everything all at once. I'm not going to implement my whole financials module and my whole, AP module and all of those pieces all in one shot. I'm going to figure out, maybe using some good business analysis practices, some good requirements practices, understanding what's most important versus less important, and order in and stage in what you're going to do. That's just how you build software these days.
Yeah, you're not going to implement and configure your entire ERP, then test it, then hand it over. No. You want to, in your individual functions, put the testing as close to the configuration piece and get it done and then moved on.